The great hall of the Vethani Palace stretched upward like a cathedral made of living crystal. Light from 3 distant suns filtered through the translucent walls, casting everything in shades of purple and gold. At the center of this magnificent space stood a platform where 12 males waited in silence. They came from 12 different worlds, each one hopping to become the chosen consort of Queen Lyreley. Marcus Cole stood among them, feeling very much out of place. He was the only human in the group, and compared to the others, he looked almost plain. The male from Zenthos Prime had 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with his emotions. The Dravani representative towered nearly 9 feet tall with scales that gleamed like polished metal. Even the smallest of the group, a being from the Whisper Collective, could phase through solid matter at will. Marcus had none of these impressive abilities. He was just a human. Average height, brown hair, brown eyes. His only claim to importance was that he served as a diplomatic officer on the human space station Unity. He had been chosen by lottery to represent humanity in this ancient ritual, and he still was not sure if that made him lucky or cursed. The Vethani were one of the oldest species in the known galaxy. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems, and their technology made human achievements look like the work of children. When the previous queen had died without an heir, her daughter Lyreley had been thrust onto the throne. By Vethani law, she had to choose a consort from outside her species within 1 year of taking power. This was meant to prevent the royal bloodline from becoming too isolated, and to strengthen ties with other civilizations. Marcus did not expect to be chosen. He did not even want to be chosen, not really. The whole thing felt like a dream he could not wake from. He had read everything he could find about the Vethani on the journey here, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of standing in their palace, waiting to be judged by their queen. A door at the far end of the hall opened, and everything went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Queen Lyreley entered, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that looked like moonlight given form. Her eyes were completely black, but they held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. Long silver hair flowed behind her like water, and when she moved, it was with a grace that made everyone else seem clumsy by comparison. She wore a simple white gown that somehow looked more magnificent than any elaborate costume could have. Behind her walked 12 advisors, each one dressed in the traditional robes of the Vethani court. They looked at the gathered suitors with expressions that ranged from curiosity to thinly veiled contempt. Marcus noticed that several of them barely glanced at him at all. The queen took her place on a throne that seemed to grow from the crystal floor itself. She sat with perfect posture and looked at each of the candidates in turn. When her eyes met Marcus's, he felt a strange sensation, like someone had reached into his chest and touched his heart directly. It lasted only a moment, but it left him shaken. "Welcome," the queen said. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the entire hall without effort. "You honor us with your presence. The choosing will proceed according to ancient tradition. Over the next 7 days, each of you will be tested in 3 areas: strength of body, strength of mind, and strength of honor. The one who proves most worthy will stand beside me as consort to the Vethani throne." The Dravani male stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Great Queen, I am Korvax of the Eternal Flame. My people have conquered worlds without number. I offer you the strength of 1,000 armies." The queen nodded politely, but said nothing. One by one, the other candidates made their introductions. Each one boasted of their achievements, their wealth, their power. The Zenthos male claimed to control an entire sector of space. The representative from the Machine Collective offered access to technology beyond imagination. A prince from the Luminari Empire promised trade agreements that would enrich the Vethani for centuries. When it was Marcus's turn, he stepped forward and bowed as he had seen the others do. He felt the weight of every eye in the room upon him. "Great Queen," he said, keeping his voice steady with effort, "I am Marcus Cole of Earth. I am a diplomatic officer. I have no armies to offer, no vast wealth, no great powers. I can only offer what I am." A ripple of amusement passed through the advisors. One of them leaned toward another and whispered something that made them both smile. The Queen's expression did not change. "And what are you, Marcus Cole of Earth?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I am someone who tries to do what is right, even when it is difficult. That is all I can say." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once and turned to address the entire group. "Tomorrow, the tests begin. You will be shown to your quarters. I suggest you rest well." As the candidates were led away by servants, Marcus found himself walking beside the Dravani giant, Korvax. The alien looked down at him with something that might have been pity. "Human," Korvax said, his voice like stones grinding together, "you should not have come. The tests will destroy you. Go home while you still can." Marcus shrugged. "I did not choose to come, but now that I am here I will do my best." Korvax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your best will not be enough. My people have studied the Vethani tests for generations. The first trial alone will require strength beyond anything your species can produce." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but I have found that strength comes in many forms." The Dravani shook his massive head and walked away, leaving Marcus alone in the corridor. A servant appeared to guide him to his room, and Marcus followed in silence, thinking about what waited for him. His quarters were larger than his entire apartment back on Unity Station. The bed looked like it could hold 10 people, and the windows showed a view of gardens that stretched to the horizon. Everything was beautiful, and everything reminded Marcus that he did not belong here. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. What was he doing? He was not a hero. He was not special. He was just a man who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as he sat there, something his father had told him years ago came back to him. "Son," his father had said, "you cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. That is where true character is found." Marcus lifted his head and looked out at the alien gardens. He had 7 days. 7 days to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. 7 days to show that worth was not measured in armies or wealth or supernatural powers. He took a deep breath and stood up straight. He did not know if he could win, but he knew he could face whatever came with his head held high. That would have to be enough. The next morning came too quickly. Marcus was awakened by a gentle chime and found that fresh clothes had been laid out for him. They were simple but well-made, in the human style rather than Vethani. Someone had thought to provide him with something familiar, and he appreciated the small kindness. He dressed and made his way to the great hall where the other candidates were already gathering. Most of them looked confident. A few looked nervous. Korvax stood apart from the others, his arms crossed over his massive chest, looking like a statue carved from living stone. Queen Lyrale entered, accompanied by her advisors. She looked just as ethereal as she had the day before, but Marcus thought he saw something else in her expression. Weariness, perhaps, or maybe sadness. Being forced to choose a consort from strangers could not be easy, even for a queen. "The first trial begins," she announced. "You will face the labyrinth of shadows. It is a maze that has existed since the earliest days of our civilization. Within it, you will encounter tests of physical strength and endurance. You must reach the center within 3 hours. Those who fail will be eliminated." The doors at the side of the hall opened, revealing a dark entrance that seemed to swallow light itself. The candidates entered one at a time, each disappearing into the darkness. When Marcus's turn came, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. The darkness wrapped around him like a living thing. For the first few moments, Marcus could see nothing at all. Then his eyes began to adjust, and he realized he could make out the faint outlines of walls on either side of him. The passage was narrow, barely wide enough for him to walk without touching the sides. He moved forward carefully, testing each step before putting his full weight down. The floor was uneven, and he nearly tripped several times. He could hear sounds from somewhere ahead, screams, roars, the clash of something against stone. The other candidates were meeting their challenges. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Marcus came to his first obstacle. A chasm stretched across the passage, too wide to jump. There was no bridge, no visible way across. He examined the walls and found small handholds carved into the stone. The climb would be dangerous, but it was possible. He began making his way along the wall, his fingers aching as they gripped the tiny ledges. Halfway across, his foot slipped. For one terrible moment, he hung by his fingertips, his legs dangling over the void. His arms screamed in protest. Every muscle in his body told him to let go, to give up, to end the pain. But he did not let go. With a grunt of effort, Marcus swung his leg up and found a foothold. He pulled himself to safety on the other side and lay there for a moment, catching his breath. His hands were bleeding, but he was alive. He got to his feet and continued. The labyrinth threw more challenges at him. A corridor filled with swinging blades that he had to time his movements through. A room where the gravity kept shifting, throwing him against walls and ceiling. A narrow bridge over a pit of something that moved and hissed in the darkness below. Each time Marcus thought he would fail. Each time he found a way through. Not through superhuman strength or speed, but through careful observation and stubborn determination. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts, his clothes were torn, and every part of his body hurt, but he kept moving forward. Finally, he saw light ahead. He staggered toward it and emerged into a circular chamber at the center of the labyrinth. He had made it. Queen Lyrale stood there, watching him with those deep black eyes. He was surprised to see her. He had expected some sort of marker or symbol, not the queen herself. "Marcus Cole," she said, "you are the third to arrive." Marcus blinked. Third, he had expected to be last by far. He looked around and saw Korvax standing nearby, looking barely winded. Next to him was the Zenthos male, his 4 arms folded and his skin rippling with colors of impatience. "Where are the others?" Marcus asked. "Still in the labyrinth," the queen said. "Some have already failed. Some will fail before the time runs out, but you are here." Over the next hour, 4 more candidates emerged. The rest did not appear before the 3-hour mark passed. They had failed the first trial. 7 candidates remained. Marcus was still in the competition. As they were led back to the palace, Korvax fell into step beside him. The giant looked at him differently now, not with contempt, but with something almost like respect. "You should not have survived," Korvax said. "I watched you enter. You are small, weak. How did you pass the trial?" Marcus thought about it. "I did not try to overpower the obstacles. I looked for ways around them, ways through them that did not require brute strength." Korvax was silent for a moment. "Clever," he said finally, "but cleverness will not be enough. The next trial tests the mind, and the Vithani mind games are legendary. You will need more than determination to survive what comes next." Marcus nodded. "Then I will find whatever I need." The Dravani made that grinding sound again, his version of a laugh. "We will see, human, we will see." But as Marcus walked back to his quarters, he allowed himself a small smile. He had survived the first trial. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way, one step at a time. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Lyrale watched him go through a window that overlooked the courtyard. Her chief advisor, a stern female named Counselor Velith, stood beside her. "The human is an anomaly," Velith said. "He should not have passed." "And yet he did," Lyrale replied. "Interesting. You cannot seriously consider him as a consort. The other races would mock us. The Dravani alone would." "I am aware of the political implications," Lyrale interrupted. Her voice was gentle but firm. "But the choosing is not about politics, Counselor. It is about finding the one who is most worthy, and worth, as the human himself said, comes in many forms. Velith looked like she wanted to argue, but she held her tongue. The queen had spoken. Lyreley watched until Marcus disappeared from view. There was something about him, something she could not quite name. It made her want to see how far he could go, how much he could endure. Tomorrow would bring the second trial, and then perhaps some answers. The second trial took place in a chamber that Marcus could only describe as impossible. The room seemed to exist in all directions at once, with staircases running along walls and ceilings, and doorways that opened onto spaces that should not have connected. The 7 remaining candidates stood in a circle at the center of the room. Queen Lyreley addressed them from a platform that floated in midair. "The trial of mind," she announced. "You will navigate this chamber. You will solve the puzzles you encounter. The first 4 to reach the exit will continue. The other 3 will be eliminated." Marcus looked at the chaos around him and felt his heart sink. This was not like the physical challenges of the labyrinth. This was something else entirely. A chime sounded, and the candidates scattered. Korvax charged toward the nearest staircase, his massive feet pounding on the crystal floor. The Zenthos male split into 4 copies of himself and sent each one in a different direction. Others displayed powers and abilities that made Marcus feel more inadequate than ever. He stood still for a moment, thinking. Everyone else was moving, searching, trying to find the exit by brute exploration. But that approach felt wrong somehow. There had to be something more to this trial. He looked at the room again, really looked at it this time. The staircases seemed random, but were they? The doorways looked chaotic, but maybe there was a pattern. Marcus sat down in the center of the room and closed his eyes. He thought about the Vithani and everything he had learned about them. They valued wisdom. They valued understanding. A trial of the mind would not be about running faster or seeing more. It would be about thinking better. He opened his eyes and looked at the room with new understanding. The staircases were not random. They formed a pattern, a spiral that wound through all the dimensions of the impossible space. And the doorways, when viewed from the right angle, spelled out symbols in the Vithani language, symbols he had studied during his journey here. The symbols told a story about a traveler who found their way home not by walking but by understanding, by seeing the truth behind the illusion. Marcus stood up and began to walk, not toward any particular doorway but toward the center of the pattern he had identified. He ignored the staircases. He ignored the obvious paths. He walked in a straight line, trusting his analysis. The other candidates rushed past him, some of them laughing at the human who was not even trying to find the exit. But Marcus kept walking. And then, between one step and the next, he found himself standing at the exit, a simple doorway that had not been visible before. He stepped through and found himself on a balcony overlooking the impossible chamber. Queen Lyreley was there, and she was alone. "You are the first to arrive," she said. Her voice held a note of surprise that she did not try to hide. "I stopped trying to find the exit," Marcus explained. "I looked for what the room was trying to teach me instead." The queen studied him for a long moment. "No one has ever solved this trial so quickly. Most take hours. Some never solve it at all." "I was lucky," Marcus said. "I had just read about Vithani philosophy. The answer was in what I learned." "Lucky?" the queen smiled slightly. "Or prepared. There is wisdom in knowing what you do not know and taking steps to address it." They stood in silence, watching through a window as the other candidates struggled below. Korvax was making progress, but slowly. The Zenthos male's copies kept getting lost in different parts of the chamber. One by one, others found their way, until 4 had joined them on the balcony. Korvax was among them. So was the Zenthos male and a quiet female from a species Marcus did not recognize. The other 3 had failed. 4 remain, the queen announced. Tomorrow the final trial, the trial of honor. As they were escorted back to their quarters, Marcus felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find the quiet female looking at him. She was small, barely reaching his chest, with skin the color of twilight and eyes like polished copper. "I am Surith of the Quiet Path," she said. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "You solved the trial differently than the others. You saw what they could not." "I was fortunate," Marcus said, "nothing more." Surith shook her head. "Fortune is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. You were prepared. That is not luck, that is wisdom." She paused. "The others underestimate you. I will not make the same mistake." She walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. That night Marcus could not sleep. He walked in the gardens beneath the three-sun sky, thinking about what waited for him, the trial of honor. He had no idea what it would involve, but he knew it would be the most important test of all. He was surprised to find someone else in the gardens. Queen Lyrelei sat on a bench near a fountain that somehow flowed upward, the water rising in spirals before falling back down. She looked up as he approached. "You cannot sleep either," she said. It was not a question. "No, Your Majesty," Marcus hesitated. "Should I leave?" "Stay. It is lonely being queen. Everyone treats you as something more than a person. They forget that beneath the crown there is still someone who feels loneliness, who feels doubt." Marcus sat on a bench nearby, keeping a respectful distance. "Do you doubt?" "Every day." Lyrelei looked at the rising water. "I did not want to be queen. My mother died before she could prepare me fully, and now I must choose a consort from strangers to satisfy laws I had no part in making." "I am sorry," Marcus said, and he meant it. "What would you do," she asked, "if you were in my place?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I would try to remember that the law exists for a reason, even if that reason is not clear to me, and I would trust that the trials will reveal what I need to know about the candidates. That is their purpose, is it not?" Lyrelei looked at him with those endless black eyes. "You are wise for a human. My advisors told me your species was young and foolish." "We are young," Marcus admitted, "and we are often foolish, but we learn, we grow. Given enough time, I believe we can become worthy of standing beside the elder races." "And you, Marcus Cole, do you wish to become my consort?" The question caught him off guard. He had not expected such directness. He took a moment to consider his answer. "I wish to serve my people honorably," he said finally. "If that means becoming your consort, then I would do my best. If it means returning home having done nothing more than represent humanity with dignity, then that would be enough." Lyrelei smiled. It was a small smile, but it transformed her face into something almost approachable. "You did not say yes or no." "I did not," Marcus agreed, "because I have learned that the universe has a way of deciding such things for us. My wishes matter less than what is right." The Queen nodded slowly. "Get some rest, Marcus Cole. Tomorrow will test you in ways you cannot imagine." She rose and walked back toward the palace, leaving him alone with the rising water and the light of three distant suns. Marcus sat there for a long time, wondering what honor truly meant and whether he had enough of it to survive what was coming. The morning of the final trial arrived with a storm. Wind howled through the crystal spires of the palace, and lightning painted the sky in shades of violet and white. Marcus watched it from his window and wondered if it was an omen. The four remaining candidates gathered in a hall that was different from the great hall where the choosing had begun. This room was smaller, more intimate. There were no advisors present, no servants, only Queen Lyrelei and the four who had made it this far. "The trial of honor," the Queen said, "is different from the others. There is no maze to navigate, no puzzle to solve. Instead, you will be presented with choices. Your decisions will reveal your true character." She gestured, and 4 doors appeared in the walls of the room. "Each of you will go through a door. What you find on the other side will test you. There is no time limit. There is no way to fail through lack of strength or intelligence. You will succeed or fail based only on who you are inside. Korvax went first, striding through his door with confidence. Surith followed, her small form barely making a sound. The Zenthos male hesitated for a moment before entering his door. Then it was Marcus's turn. He took a deep breath and stepped through. He found himself in a room that looked exactly like his childhood home on Earth. The living room where he had grown up, complete with the old sofa that his mother had never wanted to replace, the bookshelf filled with his father's collection of ancient paper books, the window that looked out on a garden that no longer existed. His parents sat in their usual chairs. His mother smiled at him. His father lowered his book and nodded. "Son," his father said, "we have been waiting for you." Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. His parents had died 3 years ago, victims of a transport accident. Seeing them here, alive and whole, made his heart ache. "This is not real," he said. "You are not really here." "Does that matter?" his mother asked. "We are here now, we can stay. You can stay, you never have to leave. You never have to face the trials or the choices or the uncertainty. You can be home." It was tempting, so tempting. Marcus could feel the pull of it, the promise of peace and comfort and an end to struggle. "And what about my duty?" he asked. "What about the competition? What about humanity's place in the galaxy?" His father shrugged. "Let someone else worry about that. You have given enough. You have traveled far from home. You have struggled against impossible odds. You deserve rest." Marcus walked to the window and looked out at the garden. It was exactly as he remembered it. The apple tree his grandfather had planted, the flower beds his mother had tended, the little stone path that led to nowhere in particular. "I used to play in that garden," he said. "I used to think it was the whole world." "It can be again," his mother said. "Just stay." Marcus turned to face them. The tears were falling now, but his voice was steady. "I cannot," he said. "I love you. I miss you every day. But you taught me that love is not about holding on. It is about doing what is right even when it hurts. And the right thing is to go back, to face whatever comes, to try to be worthy of the trust that has been placed in me." His parents looked at each other, then they smiled. "We know," his father said. "We always knew you would choose this. We are proud of you, son." "So proud," his mother added. "Now go and make us prouder still." The room faded around him, and Marcus found himself standing before a new door. He wiped his eyes and stepped through. The next room was dark and empty, except for a single chair. In the chair sat a figure he did not recognize, a being of pure shadow with eyes like dying stars. "Marcus Cole," the shadow said, "I am the keeper of truths. I will give you what you most desire. Power, wealth, knowledge, name it, and it is yours." Marcus considered the offer. "What is the price?" "Only this. You must betray one of the other candidates. Give me their name and tell me their weakness. I will use it to eliminate them, and you will be one step closer to victory." Power, wealth, knowledge, everything he might need to help humanity rise among the stars, and all he had to do was betray someone. "No," Marcus said. "Think carefully," the shadow urged. "Korvax would destroy you without hesitation. Surith is playing her own game. The Zenthos male cares for nothing but his own advancement. Why show loyalty to those who would show none to you?" "Because," Marcus said, "what they might do does not change what I should do. Honor is not about what you can get away with. It is about who you are when no one is watching. I will not betray them." The shadow stared at him for a long moment. Then it began to laugh, a sound like breaking glass. "Well spoken, human, you may pass." The room dissolved, and Marcus stepped through another door. This time he found himself on a battlefield. The ground was scorched and broken. Bodies lay everywhere, Vethani, humans, Dravani, species he had never seen before. In the distance, 2 armies faced each other. A voice spoke from behind him. He turned to find a Vethani soldier, wounded and dying. "Please," the soldier said, The armies are about to charge. Thousands will die on both sides, but there is a way to stop it. You see that banner there?" He pointed to a flag that stood between the armies. "If you reach it first and tear it down, the battle will end. Both sides will stop." "Then I will get it," Marcus said. "But there is a cost. The soldiers do not know you. They will see you as a threat. You will be struck down before you reach the banner. You will die." Marcus looked at the flag, fluttering in a wind that smelled of smoke and blood. He looked at the armies, the thousands of warriors ready to kill each other. He looked at the dying soldier. "Is this real?" he asked. "Will real people die if I do nothing?" "In the trial, nothing is real in the way you mean, but everything is true. Your choice here reveals who you truly are. And yes, in the story of this place, if you do nothing, thousands will die." Marcus did not hesitate. He started running. The soldiers saw him immediately. Arrows began to fly. Spears were thrown. Marcus felt something strike his shoulder, a burning pain that nearly knocked him down, but he kept running. More impacts, more pain. He could feel his strength leaving him, his body failing. But the banner was closer now, just a few more steps. He reached out and grabbed the flag. With his last strength, he tore it from its pole. The armies froze. The weapons stopped. The dying soldier's voice echoed across the field. "The battle ends. Peace is declared. You have saved them all." Marcus fell to his knees. Blood soaked his clothes. The edges of his vision were going dark. "Was it worth it?" the soldier asked. "Yes," Marcus whispered. "It was always worth it." The battlefield faded and Marcus found himself standing in the small hall where the trial had begun. His wounds were gone. His strength had returned, but he felt different somehow, changed. Queen Lyrale stood before him. She was alone. "You are the first to return," she said. "The others are still facing their trials." "How did I?" Marcus stopped. "The test was about choices, not about completing tasks." "Yes, you chose to leave comfort for duty. You chose integrity over power. You chose to sacrifice yourself for strangers." The queen's voice was soft. "These are the marks of true honor. Anyone would have." "No," Lyrale interrupted. "They would not. Many choose comfort, many choose power, many choose themselves." She paused. "You chose others." The doors opened again and Korvax emerged. He was shaking, his massive hands clenched into fists. He looked at Marcus with something that might have been anger or might have been shame. "The human passed first," Korvax demanded. "Impossible." "It is possible," the queen said, "and it is true." Surith appeared next. She was calm as always, but her eyes found Marcus immediately, and there was respect in her gaze. The Zenthos male came last. He looked rattled, uncertain. Whatever he had faced in his trial had shaken him deeply. "All four of you have completed the trial of honor," Queen Lyrale announced. "But completion is not the same as success. The trial revealed each of you for who you truly are, and based on what was revealed, I am prepared to make my choice." The room went silent. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Marcus felt his heart pounding. He had not expected to make it this far. He had not expected to still be standing. Whatever happened next, he knew he had done his best. And for the first time since arriving on this strange world, that felt like it might actually matter. The queen looked at each of the candidates in turn. Her gaze lingered longest on Marcus. "My choice," she said, "will be announced at the ceremony tonight. You may go." The candidates were escorted out. As Marcus walked back to his quarters, he realized that his hands were trembling, not from fear, from hope. And hope, he knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. The ceremony hall was filled with thousands. Diplomats from every corner of the galaxy had come to witness the queen's choice. The great families of the Vethani Empire lined the walls in their ceremonial robes. Cameras broadcast the event to hundreds of billions of viewers across known space. Marcus stood with the other three candidates at the foot of the queen's throne. He had been given formal clothes, Human formal clothes, he noticed, not Vethani. Someone had taken the time to make sure he felt comfortable. He appreciated the gesture. Korvac stood beside him, stiff and formal in his own ceremonial armor. The Dravani had not spoken since the trials ended, but he kept glancing at Marcus with an expression that was hard to read. Surith was calm as always, her twilight skin seeming to glow in the soft light. The Zenthos male fidgeted, his four arms constantly moving, his colors shifting rapidly. Queen Lyrale entered, and everyone fell silent. She walked with the same grace Marcus had noticed on the first day, but there was something different about her now, a certainty that had not been there before. "People of the Vethani Empire," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "allies and friends from across the stars, I thank you for witnessing this moment. The choosing is sacred to our people. It connects us to those beyond our borders. It reminds us that strength is found in unity, not isolation." She paused, and her black eyes swept across the audience. 4 candidates stood before me, 4 beings from 4 different worlds. Each one was tested in body, mind, and honor. Each one showed qualities worthy of respect. Marcus's heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst from his chest. But only one showed the qualities I seek in a consort. Only one demonstrated that honor is not about power or wealth or strength. It is about choice, about doing what is right when it costs you everything. She turned to face the candidates directly. "Korvax of Draven, you are a mighty warrior. Your strength is undeniable. But in the trial, when offered power at the cost of betrayal, you hesitated. Your honor is real, but it wavers when temptation is great." Korvax lowered his head. He did not argue. "Surith of the Quiet Path, you are wise and patient. Your mind is sharp. But when you faced your deepest test, you chose pragmatism over compassion. Wisdom without heart is incomplete." Surith nodded slightly, accepting the judgment. "Venlix of Zenthos Prime, you are clever and capable. Your adaptability is impressive, but you struggle to make choices at all. When truth is required, you hide behind flexibility." The Zenthos male's colors shifted to dark red, but he said nothing. "And Marcus Cole of Earth." The queen stepped down from her platform and walked toward him. "You are not the strongest. You are not the most powerful. By many measures, you are the least impressive of all who stood before me." Marcus felt his hope begin to wither. "But you chose," Lyrale continued. "Again and again you chose. When comfort was offered, you chose duty. When power was offered, you chose integrity. When your life was threatened, you chose sacrifice." She stood before him now, close enough that he could see the depths in her endless eyes. "That," she said, "is honor. Not what you can do, but what you choose to do. And that is what I want beside me as I rule." She extended her hand. "Marcus Cole of Earth, will you accept the position of consort to the throne of the Vethani Empire?" The hall was utterly silent. Marcus could feel thousands of eyes upon him, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on his shoulders. He thought of his parents, who had taught him that doing right was more important than doing well. He thought of the billions of humans watching, hopping for their representative to succeed. He thought of the queen herself, who had been forced into this ritual, but was trying to make the best choice she could. And he thought of what accepting would mean: a lifetime away from Earth, a partnership with someone he barely knew, responsibilities beyond anything he had ever imagined. "Your Majesty," he said, "before I answer, I need to know something." A murmur ran through the crowd. One did not ask questions when the queen made an offer. But Lyrale looked curious rather than offended. "Ask." "Do you want this?" Marcus asked. "Not because of duty or law or tradition. Do you actually want me to stand beside you?" The queen was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. "When you sat with me in the garden," she said, "you spoke of the universe deciding things for us. You said your wishes mattered less than what was right. I thought that was wisdom. but now I think I understand it differently." She took a breath. "You were not saying that your wishes do not matter. You were saying that you would honor your commitments regardless of your wishes. That is different. That is rare." She looked into his eyes. "Yes, Marcus Cole, I want this. Not just because the trials showed your worth, but because in our brief conversations you treated me as a person, not a queen. You asked about my doubts. You cared about my burden. That matters to me more than any test could show." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. The hope that had been dying suddenly blazed bright again. "Then yes," he said, "I accept." The hall erupted in sound, cheers, gasps, whispers. Not all of it was positive. Marcus could see shock and anger on many faces, particularly among the Vethani nobility. A human, as consort to their queen, it was unprecedented, it was outrageous. But the queen raised her hand, and silence fell. "The choosing is complete," she announced. "Marcus Cole of Earth is my consort. Let no one challenge this decision. Let all who witness bear testimony to its truth." She took Marcus's hand and led him up to stand beside her throne. He stood there, looking out at the vast audience, feeling completely overwhelmed. Korvax was the first of the other candidates to approach. The giant Dravani stopped at the foot of the platform and bowed deeply. "Consort Marcus," he said, using the formal title, "I was wrong about you. I said your best would not be enough. I was the fool. Your best was more than any of us could offer." "Thank you," Marcus said. "And for what it is worth, you showed honor too. Hesitation is not the same as failure." Korvax nodded, something like respect in his ancient eyes. "Perhaps we will meet again, human. I hope we do." He turned and walked away, and Marcus knew he had made his first ally among the elder races. The ceremony continued. Marcus was formally presented to the court, to the ambassadors, to the viewing galaxy. He answered questions when asked. He smiled when appropriate. He did his best to seem calm and capable. But inside he was shaking. Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the cameras had stopped rolling, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City. The 3 suns had set, and strange stars filled the sky, stars that humans were only beginning to explore. Lyrale joined him. She had changed out of her ceremonial robes into something simpler. She looked tired but peaceful. "You did well," she said, "better than I expected." "I am terrified," Marcus admitted. "I have no idea what I am supposed to do. I am not a politician. I am not a diplomat. I am just a man who was in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Or the right place at the right time," Lyrale suggested. "It depends on your perspective." She stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "We will face challenges," she said. "Many will oppose your position. Some will try to undermine us. The road ahead will not be easy." "I know," Marcus said, "but I have faced challenges before. I will face these too." Together. He looked at her, this strange, beautiful, powerful being who had chosen him from all the candidates in the galaxy. He did not love her yet. He barely knew her. But he felt something. Possibility, perhaps. The beginning of something that might, given time, grow into something more. Together, he agreed. They stood there in silence, watching the alien stars, as the first day of their partnership came to a close. Marcus knew there would be difficulties ahead, political battles, cultural clashes, the simple, everyday challenges of building a relationship with someone from a completely different world. But he also knew that he had been chosen for a reason, not for his strength or his power or his wealth, for his honor, for his choices, for who he was when no one was watching. And he intended to spend the rest of his life proving that choice was right. In the weeks that followed, Marcus learned just how much opposition he would face. Counselor Velith led a faction of nobles who openly questioned the queen's decision. Ambassadors from other empires expressed concern about an alliance with such a young species. Even some humans worried that Marcus was not qualified to represent them on such a grand stage. But he faced each challenge the same way he had faced the trials, not with force or cleverness, but with patience and integrity. He listened to those who criticized him. He acknowledged their concerns. He proved through his actions that he was worthy of respect. And slowly, opinion began to shift. Korvax returned as an ambassador from the Dravani Empire. He became Marcus's staunchest supporter, telling anyone who would listen about the human who had passed the trials through pure force of character. Surith visited often, bringing wisdom from the quiet path and becoming a trusted advisor. Even Counselor Velith eventually softened. Marcus discovered that she opposed him not out of hatred but out of fear that an outsider would not understand Vethani traditions, would not protect the things she valued. He spent hours with her, learning about those traditions, showing genuine interest in her culture. In time, she became one of his greatest allies. And through it all, his partnership with Lyrelay grew. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's quirks. They argued sometimes, passionate disagreements about policy and tradition, but they always found their way back to each other. They always remembered why they had been brought together. Years passed. Marcus never stopped feeling like an outsider in some ways. The Vethani lived for centuries, and he knew his human lifespan would be a brief flicker in Lyrelay's long life. But he made the most of the time he had. He helped forge new alliances between humanity and the elder races. He established programs for cultural exchange, for shared learning, for mutual growth. And when his son was born, a child with his mother's silver hair and his father's brown eyes, Marcus knew that his legacy would endure long after he was gone. A living bridge between two worlds, proof that honor could transcend the barriers of species and culture. On the day of his son's naming ceremony, Marcus stood before the same great hall where he had first presented himself as a candidate. The room was filled with beings from across the galaxy, friends and allies he had made over the years. Queen Lyrelay stood beside him, their son in her arms. She looked at Marcus with an expression he had learned to recognize. Love, yes, but also gratitude and pride. "You changed everything," she whispered. "You know that, do you not?" "I just tried to do what was right," Marcus said. "And that," she replied, "is exactly why I chose you." He smiled and looked out at the assembled crowd. Humans stood beside Vethani. Dravani warriors shared space with members of the Quiet Path. The galaxy was changing, and he had played a part in that change. Not through power, not through wealth, through honor, through choice, through being who he was when it would have been easier to be something else. And in the end, that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.